If you don't know somebody, you'll never be able to motivate them. If I tell you I'm going to give you, X amount of dollars if you do Y, and you're not money motivated, then you're just going to feel more misunderstood. And it creates even more friction because I feel like I'm doing this great thing, right? Like my intention is on point. My execution is suffering though because I didn't know the person I was gearing towards.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. Today, we are extremely honored to have a true pioneer in the world of sports and leadership. That's why she's here. Her name is Dr. Jen Welter. And Jen has got an extremely interesting, if you don't already know her, she's got an incredible story that we're going to tap into because it's all about leadership. I love sports. I love leadership. She was the first woman to coach in the NFL and play men's pro football in a contact position. And I believe you played rugby as well,
I did.
right?
I just like to tackle things, whether it's on the field or off.
I
Like,
love it.
just that's what we do.
Thank you so much for being here, Jen. You were a keynote at a Vistage Summit, unfortunately a remote one as always, and that was the one event part of the event that I really enjoyed. So I sent you an email, and I'm glad we connected. Thank you so much for being there. I find so much synergy and similarities between sports and leadership and management, and that's why a tech leadership show reached out to a athlete and coach because that's what I find so many commonalities, and I talk about it with my team all the time, right? I use sports analogies, so I'm thrilled to have you on here. Thanks for being here.
Hey, as long as you have the tech leadership part, we're good. Like I got
That's
leadership,
it.
but I need leadership when it comes to tech. So
There it is.
I make no claims to all of you who are out there in tech, but the one thing we really do have in common is success comes through people, right? And
Yes,
we do all need a playbook when it comes to what you want to achieve and even how to maximize human potential, right? Like my PhD
absolutely.
is in sports psychology, and I lovingly tell people that's the fusion of art and science because there's a performance science, but there are people that are performers, and getting them to their optimal is always the art part. How do you incorporate that to get the max out of human performance, right?
Huge, huge, agreed. Jen, tell us how you got to this point, right? You didn't wake up and were in the NFL coaching a bunch of men. I think linebackers, right?
Yes.
That didn't come out of nowhere. Tell me your story. How did you even get into sports and all this stuff?
I was always active as a kid. My parents lovingly say I was, running around before they knew what to do with it. So, I've had people chasing me my whole life. Funny that I went on to play linebacker, but that was a big part of my family was to be physical, to work out. So, I was doing that my whole life. Tennis was my first sport, but I grew up in Vero Beach, Florida, and football is a way of life there. Like people talk about, the town shuts down on Friday night. That's real life. And there's
Mm,
not a major college close. There's not an NFL team within, it's 3 hours to Tampa, it's 3 hours to Miami. You're not going to a regular NFL game. Where everybody goes is high school football. And I remember as a little kid thinking that this stadium was like the biggest place in the world. The lights were the brightest lights anywhere, and that the players were real life superheroes. I mean, if you think about football players, that's what they look like. They've got, if you talk Iron Man, that's a football player, right? He just happens to take it into a fusion with technology. So maybe we could talk about that intersection. Maybe Iron Man is the future of football. But that look of just being superhuman was something that appealed to me. And funny enough, it was the first place in the world someone told me girls don't do that, right? Girls don't play football. And so I didn't get to play football until 22 years old. Like I was a very accomplished athlete in other sports, played rugby at Boston College all 4 years, learned how to tackle all of those things. But football was just not an option. And I finally got an opportunity to try out for a team called the Mass Mutiny after I was playing flag football. They called and asked if anybody playing flag could play tackle. And let me tell you, I never really got the flag part. I was always tackling because I came from rugby. So they were probably really happy to like get me out of there. And when I made my first football team, I made a simple promise, and it was to step up to every challenge the game put in my way. Because I knew when I made that tryout that it's where I was meant to be, right? I'd had such a young calling there, and this was full circle. But I had no idea what I was getting myself into with that promise. But that's what it is to lead from the forefront. And I think this transitions really well to your audience and to your leadership. I mean, tech is that place, right? You progress towards things that you couldn't necessarily have that really weird reverse goal setting thing. And I've taught these classes, but I had this moment, this epiphany in my life, leading from the front, being an entrepreneur or a barrier breaker, whatever it is. You don't get that security, right? When we go to college, you say, okay, I've got 4 years. Maybe it'll be three, maybe it'll be seven because I'm going to take some time, but it's very well mapped out, right? There's a certain amount of courses, there's a certain amount of papers. You do them faster or slower, but that's on you. There's really a big goal and you work backwards. When you're leading from the front, you don't get to do that. You kind of have to find a way to create where there's no North Star. And for me, that's what it was. And so I think sometimes doing that, what we have to do is continue to get up every day, put one foot in front of the other, realize that there are going to be branches and trees and rocks and all of those barriers in the way. But that's the process. It's not about being derailed. It's the learning that you get from saying, yeah, you know what, that didn't work so well. Or, gosh, I'd like to never feel that way again. And yet, using that momentum to continue to have vision to know that there's something on the other side.
I love it. What I mean, how did it feel? How did you navigate kind of this incredible journey in a very male dominated field? I mean, I'm in a male dominated field in tech, but I mean, maybe it's 85% men. Imagine you're in a sport that's 99.999%. And the only reason there's that 0.1 is folks like yourself. Like how did that feel, and why were you willing and able to take on that insane challenge?
So the majority of my career was in women's tackle football. I know a lot of people don't even know
It's a thing.
that it exists yet. It's finally getting some more momentum, but I played women's tackle football for 15 years, and in that time we won four championships. And you think a championship is the biggest thing, right? And then you win four, and you start to think, hmm, what's next? Then I got to play on the first and second women's US national team, and that seems like it. And then you realize we're the best team in the world and no one even knows we exist, right? We're winning gold in the final frontier for
Wow.
women in sports. And in America's game, right? The game that took over Sundays, we're not even getting paid to play. We're paying to play to represent the
Wow.
USA. And you start to realize that your your big picture view of what your role is starts to change. Because I used to think as a player that if I could make one more tackle or one more great play, it would it would show the world that women could play football. And through my career, I mean, by all standards, I have six rings. That should have been enough as just a player,
Congratulations.
right?
Wow.
Thank you.
6 rings.
Yeah, but
It's amazing.
we all sacrificed. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
all of the women who play football do it for the love of the game. And when you love your teammates and you have the same goal, it makes you do crazier things, right? We say playing for something bigger than yourself. A lot of the times you hear it said football, family, and faith, right? The that could be your family at home or your family in the locker room. The game is bigger, meaning you have to sacrifice to block for somebody so someone else can score, realizing it's not always about yourself. And then
Absolutely.
faith is obviously whatever that looks like for you, believing that there's a bigger picture to the meaning the of life in general and your life in it, right? So all of those things I think push us to step past a place that we would be at if it was just us, right? Like going and playing in men's pro football. I was outspoken my whole career. I would never play football against men. I'm not crazy. And then when your back's up against a wall and you really have an opportunity to shift culture. Would I do it if it was just me? No. But would I do it for all of the women that I played football with in the trenches for $1 a game, pulling our cars up so we would have lights, walking fields to take those rocks off, knowing that, even Team USA was still paying to play. And I had an opportunity to hopefully play the game forward by risking myself. Yes, I would do that for love. I wouldn't do that for glory. I would do that for the love of my teammates and that bigger picture. So for me, it's like the analogy of being a great lead blocker, right? That person runs and blocks and sacrifices themselves. They don't get the highlights. They they take something out of the way so that the ball can progress forward. And that's what I've looked at being first as in my career, right? So it's the love of those women as the backbone and the strength to get back up. Whereas the interesting part of playing with the guys is they changed me also. Right? I think every time you're on a different team, you learn not only about yourself, but you learn how to be a better teammate. You learn the people in your locker room. And I had an assumption coming in that those guys wouldn't want me there. And it took one of my teammates really teaching me that I had to be a part of their locker room, to make me a better teammate in that situation and with those men. Because he basically told me, if it's you versus us, there will always be another one of us, right? If you've got it, then we'll throw our hands up. She's got this. But if it's us versus the world, then we handle our locker room first, and then we take on all competition, and that's a different place to be. And that was one of the best gifts I've ever been given, and that was given to me by a guy named Clinton Solomon who used to play in the NFL.
How do you apply that exact concept to business and even personal lives? Because that was an interesting concept. Because you probably went in there with a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, right? Almost
Probably a
ready to
lot.
fight because you're not giving me the respect because I'm a woman. And I think what I understood from what you just said, the lesson was, hey, relax, right? If we're going to do this together, and you have to also meet us halfway. You have to become part of our team. Tell me about that. Like, how do you apply that to life now?
Well, one of the things I think of first and foremost is people would always ask about, how do you command the respect of the men you work with? And every time they say command, I cringe just a little bit because I, first of all, don't believe you command respect. I think you earn respect. Respect is given, right? You can command somebody to do a task, you can demand X, Y, and Z, but that's a hierarchical relationship. And as soon as that power dynamic shifts, the resistance is going to be there. It's probably already resistance, but they're not going to comply what you commanded, right? Those are just such ownership, terms. To me, we have to learn each other in whatever situation it is. It's about understanding. How can you lead somebody if you don't know them? Right? How can you work with somebody if you don't understand them? How can you motivate somebody if you don't know what's at their core? And so for me, it's always a getting to know you process that starts first. I'll use the time I was a head coach for the first time as an example because I think it's hard to be the person, not even woman or man up front, but the person up front, especially that first time, right? Think about the first time that you were the boss and I'm the head coach. And I went in and I'm coaching women too. So I thought that we understood each other better. And I didn't realize that I had done such a great job with this invincible athlete persona in my playing career that I'd made myself unapproachable as somebody to share the field with. Like people would say my whole name. I don't say my whole name. I'm like, hey, it's Jen, blah, blah, blah. But my players, like I would go and instruct them on something, right? Like, hey, I need you to dip and rip, blah, blah, blah. And the ladies would literally say, but yeah, you can do that because you're Jen Welter. Like like I was larger than life, like I wasn't human. And I realized that I'd created a sense of other, that they didn't know me as a person and they were giving me credit of things that I did which looked hard and are good, but are not impossible to learn. And so I kind of went like I'm big on superheroes. Like I think they can teach us so much, right? Because they're all inherently flawed. They all have superpowers and super weaknesses. And so I made myself be very unsuper superhuman. And I went to all of my players and I made them tell me my kryptonite. And it was fascinating to hear what they would say when they didn't have to just say, "Oh my gosh, you're Jen Welter," like, "Oh, this is this big thing." Um, and, I thought my kryptonite would be that I'm 5'2" and that I was small. Now, one person did say the top shelf in the closet was a weakness, which I will readily admit, but most of them said I would give so much that I would run myself ragged, which is a very true statement and also one that I was really struggling with being a head coach for the first time. Because there was always something else I could do. There was always someone else I could help. And I was running on empty and I was feeling like I wasn't hitting home. And so once they gave me my kryptonite and they were spot on, then I made all of my players go through and come up with what their superhero self would be, right? What is your superhero name when you're great? And what's your alter ego? And it was really a wonderful exercise in getting to know each other in how we saw ourselves, right? One person called herself Wasp because she was little, but she was fast and could sting and then move. Another one that was probably my one of my favorites, and I just remember it to this day. Our running back had, wild blonde lioness hair, right? Like, and she called herself Mufasa and I came up with her, alternate name. I was like, "Yeah, okay, running back. When you're on point, you are Mufasa." And sometimes I just wanna say to you, "Move faster." Like, so we had this whole way that we could communicate when somebody was on point, versus when they were not their best selves. And we made it very approachable, and there was a whole story narrative around it. But it really allowed us to look at each other, see each other in a different light, and come up with a strategy for communication. And for me, that's really the exciting part because if you don't know somebody, you'll never be able to motivate them. If I tell you I'm going to give you, X amount of dollars if you do Y, and you're not money motivated, then you're just going to feel more misunderstood. And it creates even more friction because I feel like I'm doing this great thing, right? Like my intention is on point. My execution is suffering though because I didn't know the person I was gearing towards. Whereas if you would have told me, you know what, I have young kids and another couple of dollars isn't as valuable to me as a day off. If you told me if I do X, like I could work a half a day on Friday that week, that would mean more. And then we're both in sync and we're doing things to it. So I think it's that getting to know you process, really.
That's actually a really, really good point. Let's talk about that a little bit because you're absolutely right. Of all the years I've been managing people, I don't think I've seen two people that have the same exact motivation. I mean, it's insane. Two things that I think of. One, people have to be intrinsically motivated, and I can never motivate them. I can do my best to make sure I don't demotivate them by being a jerk, but my job is not to motivate people. And I've had people tell me that, like more junior people, she's great or he's great, but we just gotta keep them motivated. And I said, no, 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 no. We don't motivate people. We hire motivated people and just make sure we don't demotivate them. Uh, I've noticed you cannot motivate people that are not intrinsically motivated.
But you can.
Okay, let's hear about that.
Okay. Now, I agree they have to be intrinsically motivated, but motivation is also it's aspirational, right? Believing that where you
Okay.
are and what you're doing could lead to increased success. So people get demotivated, and I agree, when they don't see a
That I
path
agree with.
forward. So, but they can also become increasingly motivated when they feel confident, capable, and comfortable, right? That's the self efficacy theory. So let's say you have a woman like me. in tech sales. Okay. I am an intrinsically motivated
Hmm.
person. I have tackled some very, very big things, right? I don't speak tech language. So I might be less motivated, not because I don't want to do well, but because I don't feel like I'm capable of crushing it. So you saying, oh my gosh, Jen, I know this tech stuff sounds complicated. Let me break it down to you in very human terms. Let's use football because you get that. And then you help me, one, see that you're investing time into me. Time is I had a coach say just last weekend in an all-star game I was at, it really hit home because I always say it's one thing you can't get back, right? But he said, how do you spell love? And I was like, huh? And he said, you spell love Time, because what you love, you put time to, right? So if you, as my boss, are like, you know what, Jen, I see you as a super huge talent. You have way upside. We gotta get you there fast. And you build into me, you are going to increase my motivation and my ROI because you got to my confidence. Motivation and confidence are inherently related. We've all seen the reverse of that, right? Like that person who came in and they felt good and they just got beat down and then they survive, right? But it's hard to thrive when you don't feel competent, right? Or capable or comfortable. The other thing we can do is help people see. I usually say to my players, like, I wish I could give you the gift of seeing yourself through my eyes because I know what you're capable of, right? I see X, Y, and Z. And now it's my job to fill in some of those gaps of execution that I can help you in those ways. Because again, if I'm clear in my feedback and I help you build to where you want to go, which I got to ask first where you want to go, you will be more motivated to get there. So, no, I'm not just, come on, you got this. Like, I don't believe in that. Like, that ubiquitous, you got this, and we're happy, happy, joy, joy. No, like, that may get you up emotionally in a moment, but it's harder to follow through. But motivation can actually be enhanced. And there's a lot of really good research on that. But it's through confidence.
Absolutely. Now we disagreed on that piece kind of, but the one
Right,
piece
a
we
little.
absolutely agree on is, yeah, every single person has different motivators, right? How do you find those? That's the interesting thing because people say what they want you to hear most of the time. What's safe, what's normal, what's whatever. But how do you really understand your players or employees or whatever teammates at a level where you truly understand what drives them, motivates them intrinsically long term?
For me, I always make available moments. Okay, because the human connection allows for that. Like, right, as leaders, we have to do a lot of feedback. Feedback can be very motivating or it can be very frustrating, and sometimes it's both, right? Like, let's be honest, sometimes, some things are, motivating, others are frustrating. But a big thing is alignment. Alignment of feedback and expectation, right? Because if you're misaligned on feedback and expectation, motivation is going to go out the window, right? And execution is probably going to go out the window too, because a lot of the times I inherently find it hard to believe that people show up and they're like, you know what, I want to be terrible at my job. Like, I just want to come in and like have everybody want to fire me every day because I'm a horrible human and I'm not good at things. Like, I could do something else. But I think a lot of the times we lose steam with people. We lose energy. We lose motivation with people because what they think they're doing well, they may not be doing well, or what they think you really want them to do, they're misaligned in that, right? So I have a feedback tool I use and this really helps tap into um, understanding. And it's an exercise that some people are like, well, you could write down what that. Yes, you're right. I could do it by my process. But opening up a discussion in terms of where people feel heard and then we're accountable to it helps. So I do a feedback exercise. Like if we were doing a job and, I'm coming in to work with you and you say, Jen, you know what? Let's look at what this job requires. I want you to just write down everything that you think this job requires. Great. You're going to do the same. Okay. So we're both going to write this down. Then we're going to compare notes. Okay. And I say great communication. And they're like, yep, I agree. Knowledge of IT. We'll go back to me, right? Knowledge of, IT processes in X, Y, and Z areas. Well, oops. I'm not right there right now, right? Certain things I'm going to be really high on. Okay. Now, then you're going to ask and you'd be like, okay, Jen, I want you to rate yourself. And I'm going to do the same on where I think you fall right now on this process. Okay, we already talked about it. Communication, great. Motivation, people skills, all of those, I'm going to give you a relatively high answer. When it comes to the brass tacks of the tech stuff, look at me. It took me a while to get on our Zoom today, right? It's not even Zoom, right? We're fighting with technology. I'm going to
Hmm.
show you that I'm lower on that because I'm going to rate myself lower. It's not an absolute number, but it's there. Well, when you look at that, you're going to say, you know what, Jen? I love that you think these things are important. Now let's go through and rate all of those things that we both agreed the job entails because we have to come to alignment first. And let's go how crucial it is to doing your job, right? Because we want to make sure that we're directing time on task and that we're giving a roadmap to success. If something's not that important and I don't feel good about it, like let's say, I don't know, something that's, not really important and we're not going to use it that much. I'm not great on it, but it's not our first priority because it's not that big. But we saw those technical skills and maybe even translating. Like I always say, a good salesperson has to be a great translator. I don't have to be the best on technology, but I have to be able to break it down and make it simple to the people that maybe I'm selling to, right? So we need those things to be there. My level of confidence is low. The importance is high. Now, if you and I sit down and come up with a game plan where I can fix those things, ooh, that's pretty money, right?
Yep.
So I'm going to be motivated to do it. And you're going to say, hey, I'm setting this expectation. I know you've got these things, but in the meanwhile, we're going to make you a better part of our team by putting these action items. Maybe it's a training manual, maybe it's a mentor, whatever those things are to make it very marketable. Now, boom, we've got those things. We're building a relationship. Okay, hey, you know what? Maybe I have a couple of different bonus structures. Hey, Jen, you know what? When we do this, I know it's going to be a little bit of an extra ask. It's going to require, maybe 2 weekends over 2 months that you would otherwise be home with your family. I want to give you a bonus for that. Let me see how you're motivated. You can have two choices. You can have the following weekend we'll give you a 3-day weekend, right? That's time, or we'll give you a bonus for X amount of dollars, and maybe there's something else, and I get to choose that. I've already given you a window into how I'm motivated. Is it money? Is it time? Is it quality of life? Maybe the other one was like, you get to go to a spa and we'll give you a
Yeah.
gift certificate because I wouldn't spend money on myself. Like a lot of moms, you have to give them a gift certificate because
Yep.
if they get the cash, they're going to spend it on their kids,
Yep.
right? And so just knowing which things that they value. Yeah, exactly. I give my coaches' wives when we went to Australia, I gave the coaches' wives manicures and pedicures. And I made the husband stay home with the kids so that they could go do it. Now I'm not giving you
Brilliant.
money because I know it'll go right to the kids, but I'll give you a mani pedi and make your husbands who have been with me for the last couple weeks stay home and give you a break because
There it
that's what you
is.
need. You need some champagne too. You need that too, right? Happy wife, happy life, right? Even knowing that is something that's big in terms of feedback. So, if you knew that, you said, that's my wife. You've got other guys who that's the same thing with their wives. If you did that for them and gave them that gift, they'd probably be like, wow, that was so awesome. And then what else did you get? Oh, when you ask their husbands to do other stuff, which obviously coaching I'm going to do, they're going to be like, it's Jen, take the call. It's Jen, do X. Because she showed she cares about our family unit beyond what just happens in the walls of the office. And the more you're with somebody and the more you have that open communication, the more likely you will be to tap into how people are truly motivated and what really matters to them.
Well, Jen, one thing that I was thinking of is you talked about confidence, competent, and comfortable, but one thing is psychological safety, right? For you to break down yourself and say these are areas that I'm weak in, and for us to be comfortable giving feedback is incredibly important, right? Because if you feel like, oh, I can't rate myself low, it might cost my job, or this person might feel differently of me, then you're not going to expose yourself, and we're going to be just talking around each other. Jen, let me ask another tough topic. A lot of times when someone's going through challenges that they're really struggling, and it's not necessarily they might be struggling professionally, but it's really coming from a personal space. There's two things we can do. We can just kind of walk on eggshells because we're afraid to break them, right? And they're important, and we don't want to break them. So we fall under this ruinous empathy situation, right? Where we just kind of continue to allow them to get smaller and smaller and smaller and eventually disappear or fail. How do we challenge someone directly and really, really, really kind of shake them out of their rut, get them performing at the highest level again? Tell us some strategies on that because we're all dealing with that, I'm sure.
We are. And, I think the first thing is understanding that performance is usually a reflection of something else, right? Like again, if I'm giving people credit and I'm saying that most people don't want to show up and say, you know what, I'm going to be absolutely terrible today, right? But if our mind is elsewhere, it's very hard to be present here. In sports psychology, we tell people to focus on what's in your control, right? Can't control the weather, but I can control whether I wear a jacket, right? And those actions, right? So, what do I do right now in this moment to be successful? Not the last play, can't change that one. Can take a lesson from it, but can't get stuck there. Not two plays from now, because I'm looking two plays from now, I might mess up with what's right here, right? So, we want to get people present. To my players, I have a rule, and it's, you know, do you need a minute? I always have a minute. I always have a minute. Now, that means in football, we do like this when you need a play off, like if they need a minute, right? Like you made a big play and you're gassed, or you took a shot to the leg and, you know, it hurts and, it took your breath away, or you took a shot to the gut and we're like, I might need a minute, right? We've all had that. We have those in life too. And when you're used to being with somebody day in and day out, you know how they operate. You know whether it's the number of sales calls or the number of tackles or whatever that they make pretty consistently. When you see a dip in the performance, and in my world, it's not physical, right? I know you didn't hurt yourself or whatever, but there's a significant decrease in performance. Something is going on that's not physical, which means it's mental. And one of the things we don't want to do in that situation is compound the trauma or compound the like turtling effect, right? Like I say, it's like a turtle. We just pull in and protect ourselves. And I think it's a natural instinct where people say, like, they'll go to, and I've heard it so many times. And again, certain things make me just kind of go, like, I'll hold my breath. It's like, what's wrong with you? Okay, what's wrong with me implies something wrong with me inherently, not what's wrong. Again, that's something different. And I phrase it even differently. I just say, are you okay? Hey, are you okay? It's not like you. Can I invite a conversation? Because even notice, like I've had guys that I coach that are like, said she could see into my soul. Like I couldn't hide anything. She would just, well, your game told it to me. Now, I ask you because, like, do you need a minute? And that just means, do you need a minute to talk about whatever has your mind elsewhere? Because until I can help you work through what has your mind elsewhere outside of performance, we're not going to get you back to focused. And so, would they always answer? No. But even noticing the difference and caring enough to offer a minute or an ear is important, right? And it may not happen the first time, it may happen the second time. But for so many times, it was something life based, not work based. But we bring our lives to our work, right? We're not robotic. And you work because of the things in your life. So when that's really off kilter, when something is really off, that isolation of problem tends to make people want to get more protective, right? To get more, you know, oh, I gotta protect myself,
Turtling.
right? Yeah, turtling, like I said, and you said being small. So building a bridge that you're investing time into them as a human will make it much easier to coach them as a performer or a professional or a player. So, like the amount of times, and literally, I would be like, "Hey, you know what? You know, what's up? Are you okay? Yeah, coach. Do you have a minute? Sure. Like, coach, man, my wife is so mad at me, and I don't even know what I did." And I'd be like, "You know what? I'm an expert at male female translation. What did you do?" Right? "Well, coach, I said this." "Okay, so she heard this." "Well, coach, why would she hear this when I said that?" "No, no, no. I said I had a minute. I don't have time to explain why that whole disconnect is. We need much longer than a minute. Do you want me to tell you how to fix it?" "Yeah, coach, that'd be great." Talk them through it. "Oh man, coach, that really helped. Things better with my wife." We've now put time into the relationship. And what that means is to then say, "Hey, you know what? Next time you make that call, like let's get to closing questions, or whatever what that area is, that straight coaching on performance. It's much easier to get to those kind of specifics and those performance based variables when you have a relationship that's based on trust and love, where you both put time in. And I think too often we just think that there's a there's a fast forward button when it comes to relationship. And I get it. We have to get places fast, right? But I think being open and honest, even behind motivation, behind feedback, is one of the things that really can help with that performance. Like, hey, I see how good you can be. I want to know where that person is. I know that that person's here, but something's off right now. Let's talk about it. How can I be a resource to you? What do you need? And sometimes it helps them to come out of their shell, to just, really be like, hey, how can I be a better boss, better leader, better friend, any of those things for you in this situation? Because something's off and I'm racking my brain to fix it. And I can't do that without your help. So invite them into the conversation.
I'm going to make this even more complex for you. How do you, as a coach, as a leader in a company, as a parent, deal with people needing a minute or dealing with their issues when you're dealing with your own issues, right? Because then you're now a human. You're no longer this unshakable leader, again, in the home, in the locker room, or at work. How do you navigate that? That's very complex because people forget we're also human beings. We also have our own challenges. How do you do both, right?
Well, I think one, it is that saying, "It's lonely at the top," couldn't be more true, right? We all know that. If we've been at the top, like, it is lonely at the
Hmm.
top, because we create this scenario where we have to be all things to all people at all times, and never admit fear, never admit weakness, right? Like, that's what we do as athletes. That's what we do at leaders.
It's
And the
exhausting.
truth is that that's not really human. I probably have a little bit of a different stance on this. I have found some of the biggest moments with my players have actually come when they saw some of maybe the backlash that I got from the world of being a woman in that situation. And, they'll see, like, well, you know what? You're going to be judged on our play.
Yeah.
Coach, we got you. Right. And so it is a relationship based. I think on certain things, it's important to, yes, be that person there. You can also say, hey, you know what? Can we talk about this a little later? Like, I'm in the weeds right now, or, I'm feeling it. But it's that importance to let them see that the friction wasn't something that they caused. And I did that once, right? And I felt really bad about it. One of my players who I'm very close with, and he had struggled a lot, and I'd been kind of a rock for him even before I
Ah,
drafted him, right? And I was having a particularly bad day, and it had nothing to do with him. And yet I popped off on him
yeah.
a little bit. I think I said something like sarcastic, which, humor is my defense mechanism, it's my go to. And it upset him. And I saw it immediately. And I just waited until there was no one else around. I'm big on one-on-ones. I don't think that when you have moments where you have to be really human, that you you want to do it in a group because groups tend to have their own
Mm.
agendas. Like a one-on-one conversation allows you to truly be one-on-one. And I just pulled him aside later and I was like, you know what? I'm sorry that I meant that to be a joke and it went terribly wrong. And it was
Hmm.
not my intention to come off on you, but I got pushback from elsewhere and I didn't know how to really deal with it. And I didn't deal with you well. And I'm sorry. And you did nothing wrong and you didn't deserve that. And he had seen it, what happened, because it happened with another member of our staff. And I was like, I didn't know how to take that for you guys because I felt like, and in this situation, I felt like my players were being looked at harder because they had a female coach than some of the other ones. So they were getting criticism that was really directed at me. And
Yeah.
in turn, I didn't deal with it graciously. And where I should have just said, you know what, guys, that's on me. Boom, boom. I just didn't do it well. But I think being human in that situation can create a lot of relationship capital. That, like when we go to the bank and we deposit good human stuff on a day-to-day basis, we
Yep.
deposit that human capital. I think what that allows us to do is keep a positive balance so that even if you withdraw one day and you're less than your best self, there's still some banked up good human stuff there
Yeah.
that you know that that one withdrawal was not an indicator of your true self. It
Absolutely.
was also a bad day. And we have those things and sometimes our humanity makes us more approachable. But where I think people lose it sometimes is that they're not willing to just say, you know what, I shouldn't have said that. And you're absolutely right. And just like I ask you to do better, I'm going to try and do better. And I appreciate I appreciate you giving me the benefit of the doubt. I owe you one.
Yeah. For me, what was an effective method, Jen, in addition to all the stuff you said, is just being vulnerable as a leader. That doesn't mean you
Yeah.
put all your business on the table, but potentially telling people, hey, I'm dealing with some stuff. It's not you. If I'm in and out the next couple weeks, guys, just know I'm dealing with some stuff. It's like, wow, okay, people immediately their shoulders drop and they relax. It's like, oh, I thought it was me. I thought you were pissed at us. I thought the business wasn't
Yeah.
going. It's like, no, 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 guys. It's personal stuff. I'm dealing with it. I think that really, really helps because otherwise we don't realize the effect we have, right? It's like as a leader, you think, dude, I've got the right to just be pissed for a day or angry. You're like that all the time. But what we realize is no, 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 no. The effect we have on culture is multiplied 10x, 100x. So you can't just be that without some form of communication for more than a day or two. A day or two you can get away with, but
Right.
man, if you're having a bad week, month, year, you better communicate. So that's really groundbreaking.
You're absolutely right. And I would say, like, just the point on that is just remember everybody, like, our brains tell stories. That's how we learn, that's how we grow. And people want to fill in the blanks. Psychologically, our brains want to fill in the blanks, and we're likely to put ourselves in that
Yeah.
story. So if you're mad and you're my boss, and you know, I somehow take it personally, which we all have a tendency to do, right? There's that little bit of narcissism in all of us that like something I did may have caused this, then that story continues to grow. And those are the things that really become rooted in self-doubt, in self-criticism, in a lack of in a lack of confidence. Any of those things are stories that we often tell ourselves that maybe other people looking in that mirror, right? And that's why I like that feedback thing
Yeah.
too. Sometimes I might tell you, you know what, I'm not good at this. Like, let's say I told you I was not good at public speaking, and you're like, Jen, I actually think that that's probably kind of your superpower, but you saw me rate myself low on it. What I just told you is that my confidence isn't there. And you know it's a skill of mine. Then that's a matter of you don't need to give me a course correcting, go to this workshop. You need to just give me a little
Yeah.
love, right? Like it might just be like, hey, by the way, I saw that speech you did, and I'm going to push back on that rating,
Yeah.
and I'm going to say you're pretty much a strong 8, and I'm not going to let you get away with that, and I might just be like, oh wow, really? Okay, I'm seen.
It's huge.
Yeah.
You've broken so many barriers, right? Women struggle to, in certain level, certain companies or certain industries, getting into the leadership roles they yearn for or deserve. What's one, two, or three lessons you have for them to start with? Something really simple. I want to work for a company, but I will go to an interview and there's 11 men, or I'm on a board, but I might not be getting the respect, or it's just me. I think these things. What can we do to change that?
Well, there's a lot of research actually that say women will self-select out of opportunities that stretch where they think they are,
Yeah.
right? We've not been really trained to project higher than our right now, right? And so like if a job has 10 criteria and we only have 9, we'll wait to get that 10th before we even think about it. And a lot of the times we'll wait till we get the 11th or 12th, right? So my challenge would first be that realize that you're going to grow into any job. There's always going to be a learning curve.
Yes.
That's natural. It's expected. So project yourself higher. For the men listening, if you see a woman who's doing that to herself, be that advocate who says, you know what, you should try out for this or you should apply for this job. I think you'd be great for this.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to put in a letter of recommendation. Oh, wow, really? Like, be intentional about the growth trajectory of women. We do need some more intentional mentorship. And another thing on that is like the thing that I probably struggled with the most is being the first woman meant that I was the only woman so many times. So, where do I get mentorship from? Then it would have to be a man who literally could say, you know what, I'm going to make sure that you have an advocate in those rooms. I'm going to make sure that you have somebody speaking on your behalf, somebody mentoring into your growth, and I'm going to take pride in that. And I'm going to intentionally invest time in your development. If I could change one thing in my journey, it would have been more mentorship. It would have been, guidance in terms of, you know what, Jen, here would be a great business for you to explore. Here, Jen, you know what, go talk to these people about speaking. Here, Jen, you know what, this coach is really great. Maybe you could work with him in the off season, or you could go like this program at this school is really good. Why don't you learn and grow from this person? Guys have that a lot more, especially in sports. They have that a lot more fluidly because they shared locker rooms. They played on the same teams. They had that college network. I didn't come in as an outsider, and I have often felt like on an island or without guidance. And if I could change that, that's what I would change. Not just getting in the door. Getting in the door is part of it, but once you're in the door, who's your ally? Like, who is that person that you really rock with who will say, you know what, watch out for that guy, watch out for this situation. There are things that people should have told me don't do or don't say, and I didn't know. And you learn it, yes, the hard way, but it would be nice to not learn everything the hard way.
I love that. Jen, one more. I don't know if you agree with this, but I've heard many women say women don't support women, men support women. What are your thoughts on that?
It's a yes and a no. I think there are two parts to that. I think sometimes it's hard in situations where there's only been one woman and it's been curated that there's only one seat at the table. If there's only one seat at the table, then yeah, that woman's taking my seat. For some reason, that
Hmm.
mentality, that old mentality, is still very much alive and well in certain situations. But I've had great women outside of my direct profession who have been wildly supportive, whether it be, parallel industries or different areas. But again, you have to have one, the people who are in the position to support. What does that look like? Right? Because in a lot of the places and spaces in my career, there were no women who could support me. Not that they wouldn't have necessarily, but it was men who had that head coaching job or that general manager job or, were the ownership. So I think it's still early in certain industries to have as much like hierarchical support. And yet I still find like that is hard because when you're, say, first or second or third, and there aren't a lot of women in that conversation, the likelihood is that the outside makes it a comparative situation, right? Like, oh, well, Jen Welter
Yes.
did this. What are you doing? Like, and it's not just what's great for women or the progress or X, Y, and Z. Like, the narrative gets pitted against each other. So it's hard not to have some
Compete.
semblance of competition. Whereas in parallel industries, like I'll give a great example. Like one of my good friends is Nancy Lieberman. Nancy is an icon. She's a trailblazer. She's all of those things. She's in basketball. So she's gone through in basketball a lot of the things I've through in football. We're never going to take each other's job, not in coaching, because trust me, I'm 5'2". You don't want me anywhere near a basketball court, right? But we can be supportive of each other in emotional ways, in coaching ways, in even just fellowship, right? But so I think it's both. I think you can get great support from women and you can also get competition. And the thing I would say is like putting the either or in buckets makes us assume that it's going to be that way one way or another. I think the goal is not saying you get better supported by this or that. I think inherently what we can hopefully do is raise the bar so we're not creating as many situations where there's only one woman or where there's only one table. Like, let's create new tables. Let's pull up a chair. Let's grab an extra here, sit on my cushion and realize that there's not this scarcity mentality,
Yes.
but otherism creates a scarcity mentality that requires some intentionality to overcome.
Agreed. That's huge. Wow. You're doing so much out there. We've done so much. We've given so much to the world, right? Through your advice and your history. Tell us where people can find you. Tell us how, what you're up to these days and how we could support that.
JenWelter.com is my website. Speaking is one of my passions. I think we need more voices out there that, just are different. I've often been the only female speaker on a block. And I think it's helpful to hear just different perspectives, right? We all have different life journeys. But speaking is one of my passions. I think it helps to give those insights. I also run a lot of programs. At Super Bowl, I'm running one of my favorites, which is a day in the life, and we bring women onto the field and into the game through the game of football. So it's a very empowering day for women who have traditionally been kept out of the sport to see that, they can tackle this area of life too. So it's one of my favorites. And then Gridiron Girls is my nonprofit, and we do free football camps for girls in underserved communities. So
Amazing. We will absolutely support that. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for spinning so much knowledge our way. We appreciate
absolutely.
you greatly. Thank you so much for being here, Jen.
I can't wait to see what you take into your own practice. We have to
Oh,
huddle
a
back
ton.
up against that and see what worked for you.
Oh, absolutely. We will absolutely talk about some of the things I'm going to implement. Thank you so much, Jen. Appreciate
Perfect.
you.
Have a
Take
great
care.
day.
And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us and hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also help others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm Avetis Antaplyan, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.